Hello, and welcome to video number 2 out of 3 for the Women in Architecture Mentoring Program. In this video, we're going to have a look at some of the practicalities around being part of the program. So, going ahead with that, first of all, we're going to have a look at the responsibilities of the mentors and the mentees within the program. So, as a mentor, we expect you to be as supportive as possible to your mentee. Be as non-judgmental as possible as well, and honest. These are all ways in which you can create a safe and comfortable environment for your mentee to grow. A lot of people get quite intimidated by being a mentor because they feel like they have to have a lot to say and a lot of experience to share. But really one of the key responsibilities of being a good mentor is to be a good listener. Really immersing yourself in whatever your mentee is saying can help you ask them the right questions to push them in the direction that's right for them. And a way in which you can create a very equitable environment as well is to emphasize any gains you yourself have from the relationship, because you will. In our mentoring handbook, you can also see the list of some of the suggested benefits which we believe you have as a mentor from participating in this particular program as well. Ensuring confidentiality is part of your relationship responsibility too. So make sure that your mentee understands that they can share things with you that will stay between the two of you. The regularity of the relationship is also quite important, so we ask you to keep it regular, because the repetition of going through the process of reflection and getting back into whatever's happened and learning from it is something extremely valuable that your mentee is going to be able to then keep going with further down their career when you may not be there to support them. So make sure the relationship remains regular. And of course, very much in the light of everything else that I've said, is make sure that you keep to the mentee's agenda. Try and avoid giving them direct instruction and help them to figure out their own way, because this is a much more sustainable way of learning. That's for the mentors. We expect a lot from the mentees as well. Respecting your mentor is quite fundamental. They're a very busy individual and professional who's making time to support you, so do respect their time, please. Being non-judgmental and honest is also part of your responsibilities, because it will truly allow your mentor to be able to help you. Because if you create that distance with dishonesty or judgment, they won't be able to see what really is going on with you to guide you and give you the appropriate advice. Being punctual and considerate aligns with keeping a regular relationship and respecting your mentor's time as well. It's really important that you're willing to grow and change, because it doesn't really matter how amazing your mentor is. If you truly resist any change or growth, it'll be very difficult for them to help you. So this is a question that you need to ask yourself continuously before each meeting. Am I ready to hear things that I may not like to hear? Am I ready to change things about myself? So being willing to be open and challenged to receive feedback is very, very important. It's also up to you to prioritize what you're working on. Nobody knows better than you yourself what's important to you and what's really going to make a difference in your career and in your life. So the prioritization of issues to be discussed is very much your responsibility as a mentee. Keeping a record of your meetings is very important. I mentioned that in the first video, and we've tried to provide as many materials as possible to help you do that. But keeping a record is really going to allow you to see the evolution that you're going through. We as human beings are so inclined to just continue to push our goals further and further away from us the closer we get to them. With the record of how you've been developing and what you've been trying to achieve, you'll be able to see that progress clearly and give yourself a little bit more slack. So these are the responsibilities for the mentor and the mentee. Now, once you start a relationship, it's really important to clarify the expectations and make sure that you bring power balance within what's going on between the two of you. So in terms of expectations, we in the handbook have provided a fairly exhaustive list of things to discuss. And what we want to try and do with this is give you an opportunity before you've reached something that may make someone feel disappointed or failed to have discussed those things. And for each one of those points, any answer is acceptable. You need to figure out what's appropriate for the two of you to make that relationship work. For some people, it's very normal and appropriate to, for example, acknowledge their relationship, mentoring relationship, outside of the confines of it. But for some, it may not be comfortable for various reasons, all of which could be very respectable. So it's important to discuss those things. What are you willing to give as a mentor? What do you expect your mentee to be coming into the relationship with? If you discuss those things before you started doing anything, you're really giving yourself an opportunity to continue a very calm, peaceful, and happy relationship. You may have to renegotiate those things again throughout the relationship, but that's going to be much, much easier once you've already mentioned them once. So have a look at those and do use this list when you start your mentoring relationship. Now, entering this mentoring relationship, it has an inherent lack of power balance, right? One of you will be much more experienced than the other. So it is that more experienced person's responsibility to make sure to bring a little bit more balance. So mentors, these are some things that you could do. First of all, you can try and monitor how much each of you is speaking. You may be drawn to explaining a lot about your experience and giving a lot of advice to your mentee, but make sure that they're speaking as much as you are. Ask them questions, allow them to open up. Because if they start developing an unhealthy admiration towards you and just take everything that you're saying and applying it directly to what they're doing, first of all, they won't learn to analyze the precedent that you are and take away the things that may not be applicable to them. And worst of all, once you're not in the picture, you're not around them, they won't know what to do. Instead, if you have an equitable relationship of discussion and back and forth, they're going to learn how to take away learning points from everything around them. Again, mentors, share your failures. These could be the most valuable pieces of learning for your mentees. Don't be shy about that. Your mentee is already looking up to you, so don't be shy to show yourself with words and all. Active listening is very, very important. When you're talking to your mentee, make sure that you're asking open questions. So that's not yes and no questions. I like challenging people to do an exercise. For example, spend one day trying not to ask yes and no questions. Just rephrase them. What happens is you will receive so much more information. If you, for example, imagine the situation in which you're sitting next to your colleague and you just ask them, oh, would you like to go out for a lunch and grab some sushi? That's a yes and no question, right? Do you want sushi? Yes or no? What if you ask them instead, what would you like to do for lunch? What? They may answer, oh, I actually want to go to the gym. Nobody saw that coming. It's not very welcome on this side if you ask me, but hey ho. You see how much more you discover if you ask open questions. So what, how, who, where, which, what and how are the strongest ones. Avoid asking why questions, because we as human beings have quite a complicated relationship with why questions, and in the next video I'm going to suggest some alternatives to them. But generally we get a little bit defensive and close off when we ask our why question. And additionally, elaborate. Even when you agree with your mentee, elaborate. Because you can find yourself in a situation when you're not speaking at all in a particular interaction and you're still holding the most power. This is when the interaction sort of turns into a series of requests for permissions and you don't want to be there. Even when you agree with your mentee, elaborate exactly what you agree with. Again, you'll discover that much more information starts to come up because so often we use the same words but mean slightly different things. Another helpful exercise that I suggest to people is try and have 2 conversations today where you don't respond to the person before you elaborate and paraphrase what you've heard from them. Give it a go. You'll discover quite a lot. It may seem anti-intuitive, it may seem like you're repeating yourself, but you'll find that further down the line you've saved a lot of time from misunderstandings. So this is about power, and we need to look at logistics as well. I've just taken straight off the page from the handbook over here because Bridget designed it so beautifully. But how often, how long, and where? Again, these are our suggestions, and if something different works for you, you're welcome to do that. Women in Architecture can monitor the relationship for 6 months, and what we suggest is that you meet once a month for 6 months. You can do that virtually or live, and it's the mentor's responsibility to make sure that any platforms that you're using to meet virtually is accessible to both of you. So if you choose a paid platform, the mentor should host, but of course you have plenty of free solutions there as well. If you're meeting live, make sure that the venue is accessible to both of you and it's private enough to conduct the relationship in the most appropriate way. And then how long should the meetings be? We're saying between 1 and 2 hours. You need to explore that between yourself. If you're meeting once a month, maybe 2 hours is appropriate. But once you establish how long that's going to be, try and stick with that so you're as efficient as possible with what you're doing. Now, confidentiality, feedback, and complaints are also quite important. And we've mentioned that several times already. Confidentiality needs to be present in your relationship, and you both need to be aware of it, because you create a safe environment, and that environment is the best one to grow. Feedback, similarly, is an opportunity to reflect, so it's a great tool for growth. We've elaborated on those a little bit more in the handbook, and we're providing different opportunities for you to feedback to us and to each other. Do take those. If you have any complaints, again, a very detailed process is described in the handbook, and Women in Architecture is always here for you. Of course, we hope that each one of those relationships is going to go on very, very smoothly, and you're all going to benefit tremendously from what you're doing together. But if there's anything, we are here to help and facilitate moving forward. Now, as we said, we really do trust you to figure out what's the most appropriate way to conduct this relationship and what works best for you. But we've also seen that people can use a little bit more of a structure to what they're doing. So we're suggesting this for you to do in your supposed 6 meetings. In your first meeting, of course, spend some time to introduce each other, clarify your expectations, pull out that list that we talked about, and make sure you answer all those questions in a very open and honest way. As I said before, any answer to any of those questions is acceptable. You just need to find something that works for the both of you. Then focus on establishing the overall goal for the 6 months that you're working on. Think SMART goals. Be specific. Think about something that's measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound for your mentee. And then try and break that down into monthly goals that you're going to be pursuing. Make sure some of those are written down. If you have something written down, it's extremely powerful when you're going back to it and you realize that you've actually achieved it. In meetings 2 to 5, we suggest that you start with a catch-up and then check in. Check in if the goal is still relevant to the mentee. As I said before, it's important to have this healthy relationship with your goal. They may change, and it's okay to change. It's important to be able to flex around that. Then check in with the monthly goal. Is this still the relevant goal? The relevant next step to what your mentee is doing? Then you can use the GROW method to structure the majority of your meeting. You're going to see that in the next video. Before you close your meetings, always try and identify takeaways, because this is a great way to solidify any knowledge that's been gained through the session. In the last 6th meeting, make sure you have enough time to reflect on what has changed for both the mentor and the mentee. What are the learning points? Think about creating a bit of a plan for the next several months, whatever time frame is relevant to your mentee, with steps and goals to be pursued, and also create a list of their support network as well. Think about expanding that as much as possible, and make sure the mentee has a good think about who they can trust and who they can go to for support. These are some of the practicalities we wanted to look at, and in the next video we're going to have a look at the GROW model. Thank you for watching.